Satish, Hi guys, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, I think somebody's voice turned out to be too loud. I think I can see somebody's screen already being shared. What is this?
ಸರ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಭಾವನಾ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ.
ಅಲ್ಲ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಮೆತ್ತಿಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ತುಂಬಾ ಜೋರಾಗಿದೆ. ಅಂದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ತಾಳು ವಾಲ್ಯೂಮ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸರಿ, ಓಕೆ. I think it's better. Okay. Can you guys hear me now clearly?
ಎಸ್ ಸರ್.
Yeah.
ಸರ್ ಇವಾಗ ಭಾವನಾ ಮೇಡಮ್ ವಿಲ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಯು. ಭಾವನಾ ಇಸ್ ದ ಚೇರ್ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಆರ್ ಮಾಡರೇಟರ್.
ಓಕೆ.
ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಭಾವನಾ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ರನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಭಾವನಾ ವಿಲ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್. ಭಾವನಾ ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಇನ್ನ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ.
Yeah. Bhavana is looking around for a computer. Yes. I'm also trying to see if I can open the idu nodana. What is the password for my login for Facebook login?
Not for the Facebook. You have to log in through
No,
the page.
I have logged in, but then I'm also trying to log in through Adobe CME.
Sir, Adobe CME ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ದು ಇಮೇಲ್ ಐಡಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಪಾಸ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಇಸ್ 123.
123 na? ಏನು ತುಂಬಾ ಚಿಕ್ಕದಾಗಿ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಿದೆ.
ನೀವು ಮೊಬೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಮೊಬೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಮೊಬೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂದು ಇದು ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. Yeah, now I can see Bhavna's thing.
Can you mute yourself for a second with all the places you have logged in? Mute yourself. Mute yourself on the computer also. Mute.
ಸತೀಶ್, ಸತೀಶ್,
ಹೇಳ್ ರವಿ.
ಅದು ಪಿನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ನೀನು ಪಿನ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ ತೋರಿಸುತ್ತೆ.
ಯಾವ್ದು ಅರವಿಂದ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಪಿನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರನೇ ಭಾವನಾ ಅವ್ರ ತಾನೇ ಮಾಡೋದು.
ಅಲ್ಲ 1958 ಫೋಟೋಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಹಾಕಿದಿರಲ್ಲ ನಂದು.
ಹಳೆದು ಯಾವ್ದೋ ಒಂದು ಇತ್ತು ನೋಡಿ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದು.
ಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಸರ್ ಅದು.
ಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು.
ಇನ್ನ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ಸ್ ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಡೋರ್ದು.
ಈಗ ಇದ್ರ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಸೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಅದು ಮೈ ಫೋಟೋಗ್ರಾಫ್, ಬಟ್ ಆನ್ ಮೈ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಸೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಭಾವನಾಸ್ ಫೋಟೋಗ್ರಾಫ್. ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋದಲ್ಲಿ?
ಬಂತಲ್ಲ ಭಾವನಾ ಅವ್ರು. ಇವಾಗ ಭಾವನಾ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿ. ಇವಾಗ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಅರವಿಂದ್ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಭಾವನ ಅವ್ರು ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡಿ.
Just here to listen as a participant. ನಂದೇನ್ ಕೆಲಸನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. Dr. Arvind will do.
ಅಲ್ಲ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ತರ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಅವ್ರ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್
know what he's speaking on. ನಾನೇನ್ ಹೇಳಿ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವರೇ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಇವಾಗ ಅವ್ರ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ಏನು ಅಂತ. ನಾ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರು ಒಂದೇ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರು ಒಂದೇ. So he's going to speak.
No, you will introduce like a meeting, inflammation and diabetes.
Okay, so I now request Dr. Arvind to speak on inflammation and diabetes. ಅದು ಹೇಳೋದು ಒಂದೇ, ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ದೇ ಇರೋದು ಒಂದೇ. That's what I meant, Satish. There's no point.
Okay, sir. I'm just talking. You can share the screen, sir.
Thank you so very much. I think I'll be sharing my screen now, and today's topic is diabetes and inflammation. And then when once my screen is visible, I'm sure just give me this one, the IT team, to tell me that they can look at my screen. IT team, can you look at my full screen now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So today I'll be talking about the role of inflammation and pathophysiology of diabetes. Well, we know that India has been facing a challenge, and then these articles have been coming out in the papers. We know the burden of diabetes in India, which is quite close to 72 million. And we always start with this. The only idea of starting with this is to tell people that there is a problem, and it's 72.9 million is a huge number. It's not only that. If you look at the number of impaired glucose tolerance, it's pretty steep at 24 million and likely to rise to 41 million in the next 10 years. Now, if you add the number of people we have with diabetes and IGT, you can actually say that 20% of IGTs will progress. So that means 5 million are progressing every year to join the diagnosed diabetes group, which itself is coming to about 78 million. The problem doesn't end there. You also have undiagnosed diabetes, which is quite close to 42.2 million in India. I mean, this is what we are worried about. Absolutely asymptomatic. Not only hyperglycemia is asymptomatic, then we also see hypertension being asymptomatic, dyslipidemia being asymptomatic. And this problem seems to be growing. And then this is actually the number that we are looking at today with so many undiagnosed diabetes. Now, if I have to go back to Steno 2, most of you know about the Steno 2. One of the things that we always talk about when we talk of Steno 2 is the relative risk reduction at 7.8 years, which was about 53%. Well, people felt happy that when you go for a multi-pronged treatment, a very comprehensive care of not just hyperglycemia, but also hypertension and dyslipidemia and use of aspirin, we were able to reduce the risk of cardiovascular death by almost 53%. But what we are not really looking at is the remaining 47% of the people did not get the benefit in spite of taking the same treatment. And the same thing holds good for nephropathy, retinopathy, and autonomic neuropathy also. We are happy with that one group of patients who are getting the benefits, but we are not really thinking about the group which is not getting the benefit. So this is what is worrying the community of the scientists. There is something to think about. There is a missing link. And what is this missing link? Whenever we don't find an answer, it's easy for us to say that, all right, there are some residual risks which we need to tackle. The question is, what is this residual risk that we are talking about? What are these unconventional risk factors, and how are we going to target it better? So is inflammation the answer in years? Well, this is something that we need to know. We have been talking about inflammation and diabetes for almost 2 decades. Very well established. In fact, for the last 10 years, people have been talking about a very solid association of inflammation and diabetes. And inflammation is not only associated with diabetes, it also exists in pre-diabetes. Also there in rheumatoid arthritis and atherosclerosis. Now this seems to be the principal link. And we have the proof that inflammation exists at all levels of pre-diabetes and diabetes plus the other conditions. Simply when we talk of the pathophysiology of diabetes, just to make it easier, we talk about, I'll not touch upon type 1 diabetes at this point of time. Let me just go to type 2 diabetes. Well, we talk of insulin resistance on one side, and we talk of beta cell dysfunction causing reduced insulin production, or what we call as the insulin deficiency. And we simply say that, okay, there are genes implicated. It is genetic in nature, probably hereditary, and there are environmental factors. And both these play a role, eventually causing insulin resistance, beta cell dysfunction, leading to type 2 diabetes. So, when we talk of chronic inflammation, it is linked basically to metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes, atherosclerosis, and diabetes. And as type 2 diabetes develop, the body becomes less sensitive to insulin, and the resulting insulin resistance leads further to inflammation. And this is a vicious cycle with more inflammation causing more insulin resistance and vice versa. Inflammation is not only present in obesity, but it's also there in the muscles. It's there in the tissue inflammation. It's there in the pancreas. It's there in the liver. And gut microbiome is something that we have been talking about. It exists everywhere. The entire thing, even though a bit complicated, we'll try to break it down into something which is very simple. And people have been talking about the disruption of the inflammatory gene which exists in our body. And this disruption of the inflammatory gene, whatever may be the causes, it could be an environmental signal, inflammatory moieties, cytokines, PKC activation, viruses, or OSTLR, whatever is the reason, there is a disruption of the inflammatory gene, and this disruption actually triggers through the messenger RNA pathway for the TNF alpha to actually burst out. And TNF alpha, in fact, has a direct role on the nuclear factor kappa B, and this is the headquarters which is basically taking care of the immune system. So when once we have the activation of TNF alpha and the nuclear factor kappa B, the rest of the inflammatory cytokines start to develop within the body, triggering the chronic inflammation. So today, if you're looking at the mechanisms linking inflammation and diabetes, we can pick it up by easily looking at the leukocyte count, which starts to increase as a first marker of chronic inflammation. And there are also increased cytokines, what we call as the pro-inflammatory cytokines, not just in diabetes, but also in obesity, metabolic syndrome, patients with hypertension, NASH, PCOS, type 2 DM, and patients with CVD. So, inflammation actually worsens acquired insulin resistance and acquired beta cell dysfunction. And when once the blood glucose starts to rise, and when once there is an increase of free fatty acids, that further worsens inflammation. So, this is the vicious cycle that we have been talking about. Gut microbiota and microbiome is something that people have been talking about. And both obesity and the microbiome actually trigger inflammation, and that in fact get worsened. Well, this is a very old slide of how people are putting on weight and how Michelangelo's David went to US and within 6 months put on a lot of weight because of the food. Now people do get confused with inflammation. When we talk of chronic inflammation, we are not talking about the acute infection that we see in the form of an abscess, which is typically described as tumor, rumor, dolor, calor, and I can't even pronounce this, functiolasso. And this was described by the Aulus Cornelius Celsus. What we are talking about is a chronic inflammation that we see inside the body, which is intracellular. How can we say that there is inflammation? Now, we needed the proof. People were talking about inflammation, but we needed the proof that inflammation develops. The question is, when does this inflammation develop in a person? And this has been beautifully taught to us through this POP ABC trial, which was actually the baby of Dr. Sam Dega. What they have done very simply is they did the OGTT in African Americans, Caucasians, who had parents with type 2 diabetes. So there were two groups, African Americans and Caucasians. Both of them had a strong family history of diabetes, both parents. And this was the age group. And initially, when they were taken up, they had normal fasting glucose and normal glucose tolerance. So these people were followed up very systematically, initially for 5 years and then for 10 years. And this continues even today. So the idea was to see that when you follow up somebody who has a strong family history of diabetes, when do they land up with IFG, IGT, or maybe a combination of IFG and IGT or type 2 diabetes? And how many continue to remain normal even at the end of 5 years or 10 years or 15 years? And what happens in these progressors? What are the changes that you actually see at the cellular level? And what did they measure? This is fantastic. In fact, they looked at the demographic, the blood pressure, anthropometry, body composition, fat distribution. They looked at the food habits, the exercise levels, the biochemistries, insulin secretion, the beta cell functions, insulin sensitivity with clamp tests, energy expenditure, inflammatory markers, adipocytokines, and repository like the DNA, RNA, proteomics, and metabolomics. So I will not be going into the details, but I'll probably just touch upon inflammatory markers and adipocytokines. In fact, if you look at the literature and see what are the markers of chronic low-grade inflammation, this is what you find. White blood cell count is a very simple marker. IL-6, TNF-alpha, IL-10, and then acute phase reactants. We can look at hsCRP, serum amyloid A protein, and fibrinogen. Then you can also look at the immune cell markers, especially the increase in CD8 plus T cells and decrease in CD4 plus T cells and CD19 plus B cells. Most of it, of course, is done in an experimental research setups, difficult to do in the normal clinical practice. So what we can do, which is very simple in clinical practice, of course, is the WBC count and the hsCRP. Now, this is a very good paper which tells us that the white blood cell count itself can tell us what's the thing of insulin sensitivity, and it can predict the development of diabetes. In fact, any value more than 6,900 has an independent 52% increase in diabetic risk. The problem is you don't know the baseline of most of our patients. In fact, we don't do it on a regular basis every 6 months. These tests are done only when they're not normal, when they go to a doctor and just want to see how things are going on. This is a good meta-analysis which tells us the relative risk of some of the cytokines. Now, apart from the WBC, if you are looking at some of the cytokines, CRP is a very good predictor of inflammation. TNF alpha, then IL-6, IL-1, 8, and IL-1 beta. And if you're looking at adiponectin, remember, low levels of adiponectin is increased the risk of type 2 diabetes. Now, HSCRP and incidence of type 2 diabetes is something that is known among patients without diabetes. Increasing tertiles of HSCRP at baseline is associated with an increased risk of developing diabetes. And this has been the talking point now for the last 15 years, but we have never really taken note of this. And adiponectin and progression of diabetes in the diabetes prevention program is known. In fact, if the baseline adiponectins are higher, progression to type 2 diabetes is slower. So, low adiponectin means higher chances of developing diabetes. Higher adiponectin means the lower chances of developing diabetes. Now we come back to this. Let's see what happens in this particular trial. You look at the white blood cell count. As the number of years progressed, this is the African Americans and this is the Caucasians. Now the important thing to see is in both the groups, there was an increase in the white blood cell count, which is trying to tell us that there is low-grade inflammation happening as we progress in life. And when you look at the CRP levels from year 0 to more than 3 years, there's a slow increase in the CRP levels. Again, which is trying to tell us that probably inflammation is setting in both the groups. Maybe a little more in the African American group compared to Caucasians, but it seems to be happening across the thing. And there were two groups, non-progressors and progressors. I did talk about it. And this is the adiponectin levels. In fact, the adiponectin levels we know predict pre-diabetic risk. In fact, adiponectin levels started to go down as the duration of diabetes actually, as the duration of the follow-up actually increased. There are three stages when we talk of diabetes. One is, of course, the normal level. Next, of course, we go through a stage called the pre-diabetes, and we go through a stage called type 2 diabetes. Important thing to realize here is in the Indian diabetes prevention program itself, almost 20% of the people progress from pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes within a year. When once somebody develops type 2 diabetes, then you are treating diabetes. If you can pick them up at the level of pre-diabetes, that is the time when you can actually start the prevention. And even if you start the prevention at the level of pre-diabetes, we know close to 20% actually progress to type 2 diabetes, and it's only the lifestyle changes that matter. So if one can identify the inflammatory markers, even before the stage of pre-diabetes, that can be an area where you can actually plan your prevention program. So type 2 diabetes being an inflammatory disease, there is enough of international evidence, and this has been going on from 2004. So you can get an idea that for the last 16 years, we have been talking about it, but we haven't done anything serious about it. Well, there has been some insight. All these drugs have been tried, and we know hydroxychloroquine today is available to us. I will not go into the details of each one of these drugs, but there are specific sites where some of these drugs work. In fact, when they looked at salicylate, it was actually working through the IKK beta nuclear factor kappa B area, and some of these drugs are working through TNF alpha. And some of these drugs were IL-1 beta and then IL-6. So there are different areas that you can actually target and then try to see whether an anti-inflammatory can be of use. I'll start with the Jupiter trial where the steroids were used. The rosuvastatin was used. Sorry, not the steroids. The statins were used. The rosuvastatin was used. And then we know about the Jupiter trial. And then statins are great anti-inflammatory agents. That is why today we do use it in diabetics, even though the LDL levels can be normal because they have pleiotropic effects. They do much more than just reducing the LDL. But unfortunately, even though there was an improvement in the group taking rosuvastatin, there was a higher incidence of physician reported diabetes. And people did talk about statins increasing diabetes, mainly after the Jupiter trial. So as an anti-inflammatory, probably rosuvastatin or statins are not the right drugs to use in the prevention or to tackle inflammation, which we have been talking about, the low-grade inflammation that is there in diabetes. Now, salicylates we know can work through nuclear factor kappa B, and this is actually the work of Dr. Alison Goldfein. And what she found was a good reduction in white blood cell, a good reduction in neutrophil, a good reduction in, good increase in the adiponectin actually when they use salicylates, a good reduction in HbA1c. So it looked very good when the salicylate trial came out because they thought nuclear factor kappa B is the target of inflammation and probably you can prevent diabetes. Everything looked good, but unfortunately, it did not reduce HSCRP, which is a marker that I and you can use in our clinical practice. So the salicylate trial, well, even though showed a lot of promise, did not really prove that it can reduce the inflammation. This is also called the tinsel study that people talk about. Well, there's been a lot of studies with hydroxychloroquine, especially in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. In fact, this is a paper where patients with rheumatoid arthritis were using hydroxychloroquine for more than 4 years. And there was a 77% reduction in risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the group of patients who were taking hydroxychloroquine for rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, and in fact, this was an eye opener in 2007 that, okay, there is something happening when hydroxychloroquine is given. Not only is taking care of rheumatoid arthritis, but then the new onset diabetes was much less in the HCQ arm. So if you want the points for diabetes and inflammations, the components of the immune system are altered in obesity and type 2 diabetes. As a result, changes occur in adipose tissue, the liver, the pancreatic islets, and vasculature and circulating leukocytes. The immunological changes include altered levels of specific cytokines and chemokines, and changes in the number and activation of state of various leukocyte populations, and increased apoptosis and tissue fibrosis. Together, these changes suggest that inflammation participates in the pathogenesis of type 2 diabetes. The preliminary results from clinical trials with salicylates and interleukin-1 antagonists support this notion. Efficacy and safety data from hydroxychloroquine is extremely promising. I think we can talk about hydroxychloroquine in the next class. So this was just a trial class to know how the thing happens. We're just getting ready for the Adore conference, so I thought I'll just talk about this. With this, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so very much for the patient hearing. Well, if there are any questions, I will just take the questions. I will see whether the moderator is going to ask me the question or not. Well, the first question that has actually come from the moderator. The moderator wants to know how can we reduce inflammation in ways other than using hydroxychloroquine? Well, One is, of course, the use of statins that we do in type 2 diabetic patients. And of course, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are too risky. So I don't advise any one of you using non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. But then people thought that vitamin D can have a role, but very clearly we know vitamin D has absolutely no role. So at this point of time, what we have is actually statins in all patients with type 2 diabetes. But then statins for prevention, well, it did not really come out with this. Does that answer the question of the moderator? What is the link between obesity and inflammation is a question that has come from Mr. Ravi Kumar. Mr. Ravi Kumar, I think we need to do your cytokine levels. You have been on a heavier side now. I've been talking to you that you should actually lose weight. You have been on a heavier side. If you really would like to look at the link, I think we can do an HSCRP probably at the Diacon lab tomorrow, or maybe if we can also do an IL-6, TNF-alpha and things like that. We can definitely establish low-grade inflammation, which results in insulin resistance, and the chances of developing diabetes in future will be on a higher side. And we can also look at your lipid values and then see whether you also have any other issues. Again, he has sent the same question that Dr. Bhavna has asked. Question has come to all speakers. Speaker never sees the question, only moderators see and filter the question. That is to everybody. That's a good one. The speaker will not be in a position to look at it. I think it's a moderator who has to see. And we don't need to see who sent the questions. You can only copy and paste the questions, no names.
You're
So
not required to read everything out. I just put it in so everyone understands.
I'm only reading everything out to know whether you people are getting the transmission right or not. It doesn't give me pleasure to read out here. Come on.
The transmission is okay. No technical issues. Delay of 30 seconds. That's fine. No problems at all.
Good, because I'm also trying to see how I look with the basketball. The lighting was good. Live broadcast is still happening, or it's over now?
It's live casting, sir. Now the advertisement time.
Where is the advertisement time?
So the advertisement comes whenever Satish speaks, because the advertisement is Diacon.
Well, I have opened this one, Satish. Where is the advertisement time?
And now it will come. In your this one is Zoom. It's coming now.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'm coming in Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all fine. I can see Rupa changing the slides. So in between talks.
Bhavna, you can see Rupa changing the slides on the Zoom, but you must look at this one, no?
YouTube, it started coming, sir.
Yeah, it's coming. What's the issue? It's coming.
Please do one thing, actually, unseen sir video on the Zoom.
It's coming on YouTube.
I have opened the YouTube. I am still coming on YouTube. I don't know why I am.
Satish, unseen sir. Unpin the
yeah, I unpinned him as soon as he finished this one, but it's coming same thing.
Yeah, no, now it is not coming.
He is mostly pinned the video and he is seeing himself. That's all. So that's
no, now I have started seeing the inherited risk chances. So now I am seeing the slides, triggering mechanisms. Now I am seeing the educational slides coming now.
Okay. Ivaga, I think overall the transmission wise there's no issue. Ravi, only thing will be clear about is you're going to take, or whoever will sit and designate roles for each person.
Yes.
Who's going to do what?
Hey, Satish has that list. Satish, you mentioned the list to Bhavna.
Yeah, shown to Bhavna also, sir.
Yeah, okay. Can you read it out once more now, Satish? So all of us are here, so it is clear.
Yes, madam. Madam, faculty introduction slides will be run by Deepa.
Yes. So she will have that CV slide set. Yes. Okay.
And admitting the faculties, mute and unmute and pinning the video is done
Hmm.
by me, Satish.
Okay. Fine.
PPT branding of the companies.
Sponsorship branding.
Branding
Okay. Hmm.
companies will be done by Rupa.
Okay. That slide set, Ravi has to
Give
get
to
that
Rupa.
ready
Yeah.
and show us, and
Yeah.
then based on which sponsors are primary, secondary, tertiary sponsors, then we have to have different exposure time for different sponsors, and then make that slide set for Rupa. So Rupa's job will only be to play. So Ravi,
ತುಂಬಾ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಯಾವಾಗ 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 ಅಂತ ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು. ರೂಪ
ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅದೇ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಹೆಂಗೋ ಶಿ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ 10 to 15 minutes ಟೈಮ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಯಾವ್ದಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ ಬರ್ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು ಫಸ್ಟೇ. ವಿಚ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಪ್ಲೇಡ್ ಆಫ್ಟರ್.
ಸತೀಶ್, ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸೆಷನ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ 2 ನಿಮಿಷ 3 ನಿಮಿಷ 5 ನಿಮಿಷ ಟೈಮ್ ಇದೆ.
ಅದೇ ಟೈಮ್ ಇದೆ. ಯಾವ ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಪ್ಲೇ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅರವಿಂದ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು.
no, it's not like that, Satish. Ravi is going to give me the full PowerPoint.
ಓಕೆ ಮೇಡಮ್.
Okay, let's say there's a primary sponsor that this is an example. Let us say the primary sponsor has 50 slides.
ಓಕೆ ಮೇಡಮ್.
Secondary sponsor may have 30 slides. Tertiary sponsor will have 20 slides. So it will be jumbled up in that whole PowerPoint presentation. And in between every session, Rupa will be playing these slides. So if you start from first slide,
Yes,
after 2 minutes, how much ever she has played, it pauses there. After
Okay.
the next session, it will start from slide 11, maybe go until
Yeah.
20. After the third session, it will start from 21, go until 30.
Yeah, it's correct idea, madam.
So
Like
we
that only.
do it
Let's
like that. So for Rupa, what she will have to do is only share screen, play the slides. Whenever we stop to start the next session, when she starts again, she has to start from the next number. Every time she should not start from number 1. If
Yeah.
she has
Can we give some music with these slides?
We can play some light music background.
At the background, because otherwise it will be too boring.
Okay.
That
That can be done in the
like,
PowerPoint itself. We can play some light music.
Yes. So Ravi, when can we expect to see these slides from you?
I have received only for 5 companies details. I'm reminding them others today again. So we will give it some deadline for each company to submit their
No, give
logo.
them a deadline that Dr. Bhavna wants to see it by 12th. And if Dr. Bhavna doesn't see it before the 12th, only the ones which she has approved will be shown. So very clearly use my name, and you can give the deadline as 12th. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So by then, if we have everything, you can get it ready on Sunday and we can meet on Monday again. So
Yes.
give them the deadline as and Saturday, those people don't work. So give them the deadline as Friday.
Friday.
And use my name. If Dr. Bhavna approval doesn't come, then your slides cannot be shown. It's very clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Ravi,
Yes, sir.
this speaker's face on the YouTube, what Bhavna has sent a message, I think it has a lot of relevance, because the way we see it here and the way it was shown in RSS day, there's a huge difference. Both are Zoom platforms and YouTube platforms.
Sir, sorry, when you're sharing your screen, the thing is you don't have because control will be in your system. So you will not have any option to choose the where your video has to be represent over there and that. So that is a problem.
ಇಲ್ಲ ರವಿ, ಒಂದೇ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಟೋಮ್ಯಾಟಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೋಗೋದು RSS ನೋಡ್ದು ಎಲ್ಲಾನು.
Sir, ಅದು branding ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. That's what I'm saying. That is when we buy a Zoom ಅಲ್ಲಿ more than 10 host subscription, then they will allow us to do those kind of a flexibility. ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಕು ಏನೇನು ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ವಿಡಿಯೋನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೂವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು, ಆ ಇಮೇಜಸ್ ನ ಇದನ್ನ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ನ. But right now they are not allowing us in this kind of a platform.
Why? It's another conference package you are buying, right?
Sir, conference package alene single host to multiple host options are there. For each host we have to buy additional licenses.
ಈಗ ನಮ್ದು ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೋಸ್ಟ್?
100.
ನಮಗೆ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಒಂದೇ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಸರ್?
Single host, 100 participants, sir.
100 participants are there.
That
But
is
there is
there. That is
RSSDA had 10 to 12 different hosts, means actually different rooms. So they bought a multiple licenses. Then they will allow all this kind of functionality.
okay, you get it. Diacon is also 100 participants, right?
No.
Sorry, it doesn't come in the 100 participants actually. It is a number of hosts, depends on
One
the number
host,
of
100 participant ಆತರ sir.
You know, what is it that we have in Diacon? It is the same.
That is the 300 number attendees, but it is not a web conference. This thing, what right now we are running.
So what we are running is not meant for conference. So there is a
No, it is not for conference. It is for only for a meeting.
Okay, what is
Same
the
platform use
difference?
ಮಾಡಿ.
What is the difference between this and that?
Sir, there actually there will be an initially the attendees will come as attendees only. Then attendees will be promoted as a speakers, or attendees will be promoted as a panelists.
Okay, here they come in directly into the main.
The Zoom, yes.
That's the only difference.
Right now, that is the only difference in between our existing plan and for that plan.
ಬಟ್ ADA ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಅದೇ ADA ಪ್ರೈಮರ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಪ್ಲಾಟ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ನೀವು ಅದ್ರ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ನೋಡಬಹುದು, ಸೇಮ್ ಇದೇ ತರ ಇದೆ.
Okay.
ADA ಪ್ರೈಮರ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಸೇಮ್ ಪ್ಲಾಟ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ತಗೊಂಡಿರೋದು ಅವರುನು.
Let us see, Ravi, now. Okay, I just moved this one. So let me just share my thing. Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Screen ಮಾಡಿ, share ಮಾಡಿ, sir.
Okay, now you see how this looks on YouTube now. If the YouTube this one is going on,
it will come, sir. 1 second.
It will take few extra seconds.
Yeah, it is in the top corner, top right hand side corner.
Yeah, that's the default view. Correct.
it's only in that thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
ಹೌದು ಸರ್, ADA ಸೇಮ್ ಹಂಗೆ ಇರೋದು ಸರ್. ADM ಪ್ರೈಮರ್ದು ನೀವು ಪವರ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಅದನ್ನ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಸೇಮ್ ಹಂಗೆ ಇದೆ.
So this is fine. Okay, this Ravi can just check if it's possible to move it. If we cannot do it with one host Zoom subscription, we'll not worry about it, Ravi. So that's fine. Satish, in the list, what was next?
In 1 second. Ravi will be in the help desk. That's all. The question posting will be done by Dr. Syed.
Okay, so we have to instruct Dr. Syed to not worry about who's asking the questions. So we'll not put too many names.
Yes.
And the question will be posted in the chat box here, and the moderator will filter and ask the questions, because sometimes 5 questions, 10 questions, it can be repeating. The same question can repeat in different ways. So always post it to everyone. So usually the moderator will see and ask, because the speaker may not have the time to look at the questions during the lecture. So usually during the lecture, the moderator's role is to screen all the questions and then ask, so there is no repetition. The only concern, Ravi, one though, are you here listening?
Ravi
muted himself.
ಅವನಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಫೋನ್ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ.
ಹೌದು. I will also wait for him to come back.
ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ನೀವೇ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ?
ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಮಾಡರೇಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಹಲೋ.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ವಾಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಮಾಡರೇಟರ್, ಚೇರ್ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಮಾಡರೇಟರ್?
ನಾನೇ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. Yes.
Okay, ಸರಿ.
Okay, Ravi is here. So Ravi, the only one thing that I was telling Satish also is there was Deepa's name was there in 2 places. One in the faculty room, plus here to share the introductory CV slides. So if there is an overlap, let us say she's sharing the CV slide and at the same time some other faculty logs in, she cannot do two things at the same time. So you will have to then take over the faculty room or the slide sharing, one of the things. So what is
Okay.
your plan?
ಸಿ ನಾನು ಸತೀಶ್ ಜೊತೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ವಿ ಥಾಟ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಗಿವ್ ದಿಸ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಂಜಯ್. Dr.
That is
Sanjay Reddy
fine. I think that's a good idea. Then he can be there backstage to
Yes.
say hello and speak to everyone, and I can be doing the introductions in between
Correct.
and on the front stage. So Avaga, even if Deepa is not there backstage, that should be okay. All right, then that's okay. In case restroom break ಆ ತರ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ someone else.
ನಾವಿರ್ತೀವಿ, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ, ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ
ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಇವಾಗ ನಾವು ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಅಡ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಗೂ ಏನೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಇರಲ್ಲ, ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲೇ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಸ್ ಒನ್ ಬೈ ಒನ್ ಇಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀವಿ, ಯಾವ್ದಾರ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ.
Okay, fine. Then done. So all my doubts are clear. So at question to ask a question, that one thing, Ravi, you need to fix that. So at question submit ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ask a question ಅಂತ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತಿ
ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್
ರಿಫ್ರೆಶ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು.
The reason I'm saying this is because we may ask multiple questions. Morning, madhyana talk, evening talk, ಒಂದು they may not be related topics. So ad hale question ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ಬೇಕು.
ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
I think otherwise it's fine. I am quite happy with the way the stage is looking. It's much bigger, screen space is good, but once we can meet and see this design part together, but it's functioning okay. I have no issues with the functioning aspect.
And the design.
Yeah, the stage design is good. Lobby, again, I think it just needs to be brighter. Like the stage is so bright, lobby looks a little dull. So I don't know if we haven't got the high definition images and added it yet, and avag will it change? But stage has to bright agilla lobby nonta.
Okay, I ask them to change the color, the lighting.
Ravi, what is this preview from Digital Arrow? What is this?
They have given us a demo page actually. It is not a live page. 3D work ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋರು.
ಇದು 3D ಎಲ್ರಿ ಇದೆ, ಇದು 1D ಇದು 1D ಅಥವಾ 2D 3D ಎಲ್ರಿ ಇದೆ.
ಆಯ್ತು ಸರ್.
Ravi, are you in the hospital now?
ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್.
No, I am at home.
You're at home. Then when are we meeting to finalize the design? It kutkolake. You want to do it now? We can do it now on Zoom. But we'll stop the YouTube screening and then continue this on Zoom.
We can do that. Otherwise, you want me to come? I can come.
1D ಅಥವಾ 2D 3D ಎಲ್ರಿ.
Ravi, I'm going to stop the live